Hi everyone, my name is Ashley Smith. I'm a business and marketing teacher at the Madison County ATC in Richmond. Back in October, I had the opportunity to go to MBA Conclave in Louisville, which is where I got the inspiration to completely change my classroom and teaching style. The information I'm going to present today came from 3 sessions that I was able to attend that really tie it all together. The first is the simulated workplace, which is the overall theme of all of the sessions. But at this session, a teacher from West Virginia presented this, and so I've kind of taken it and modified a lot of the information to fit my personal classroom and to reflect Kentucky's pathways. But the simulated workplace is actually a statewide initiative in West Virginia, and based on what the teacher that presented said, it's really helped with their employment rate in the state. One of the things that I found interesting about what they do is that they require all of their CTE students to submit to drug testing. And from my understanding, those students that are unable to pass are guided to the resources needed to rehabilitate. They're also required to complete some sort of program. And I think that she said that they have found that that has had a direct correlation to their employment rates. So again, the concepts I'm going to discuss, they're kind of a hybrid, one of the simulated workplace, another of managing the classroom by Eva Marie Foxwell, who also presented at Conclave. I highly recommend her book, which I'll mention later, and participating in one of her workshops if you ever get the opportunity. And the last topic I'm going to talk about is youth entrepreneurs, or YE, but I'll get into more about that at the end. But the main point about YE is that you need to take away is that it is absolutely amazing, and it will truly change the way you teach, and it'll innovate your classroom. So let's get started. I wanted to start out with some facts that I feel every Kentucky teacher needs to know. I guess you could say that this is my justification for knowing that there is a need for change in CTE classrooms. First off, approximately 70% of jobs in the United States don't even require a 4-year college degree. So I'm so glad that in recent years that we are, as a state, shifting away from the everyone needs to go to college I guess, agenda and putting more emphasis on CTE. But while the 4-year degree is not required for 70% of jobs, there is some form of post-secondary training that is required. And again, according to the Department of Labor and the Bureau of Labor Statistics, 2/3 of the fastest growing occupations over the next decade are in the fields of health and computers. So, I mean, as business teachers, that's us, and anybody that that is in the health field or medical field, that would include them. And then there are lots of ways that the two and other pathways that we offer in Kentucky overlap. Now, in Kentucky, I'm proud to say that we offer over 100 career pathways. I think it's actually close to like 150 within CTE. And we have opportunities for certifications and experience within these areas. It's amazing that our students have these opportunities. Now, again, not all the pathways are offered in all school districts, but it's still amazing that the opportunities exist. However, this next bit of information is a little bit troublesome to me. In the 2018-2019 school year, there were 109,529 seniors enrolled in a pathway class. Of that group, throughout their 4 years in high school, 58% of them took only one pathway class. 22% of them were considered exploratory, 10% were preparatory, and 10% were completers. I know we've made big changes in the last few years to get more students career ready, which is great, and I really can't wait to see how the data has changed given the new guidances on completing pathways. So the reason that this data is a little troublesome is that in 2018, there were 20,496 high school graduates that took out federal loans. The average yearly loan for these students was $2,551, which doesn't seem like a lot, except that 70% or 75% of high school graduates that year were working for an average yearly wage of $9,503. This means they were likely working part-time, but nonetheless, they were well below the poverty line. In 2018 in Kentucky, they also collected information about the education attainment of past graduates. The links to all this information can be found at the end of this presentation, but I promise they're valid and collected by the state, so I'm not just making this stuff up. But based on the data they collected in 2018, 31% of graduates maintained only their high school diploma. They didn't go on to get anything else. This is down from the previous year. 7% obtained some sort of CTE certification. That also was down, which is not necessarily good, from 11% in 2017. 60% had some college, and 2% graduated college with some sort of certificate or degree. We are all, I'm sure, concerned for those that only received a high school diploma and their future prospects. But I want to draw your attention to those that only had some college. This means that they didn't graduate. This means that they probably owe quite a bit of money, especially if they were working only part-time and they didn't have scholarships or grants. Which brings me to the topic of debt. In 2018, the average student loan debt per borrower in Kentucky was $28,078. Of the 2% that completed some sort of college degree, 60% of them had debt, which is a factor into why Kentucky is ranked 25th in the nation for the amount of student debt. Again, I'm glad that as a state, we're steering away from everyone should go to the college mindset, and this is a big reason why. Okay, so clearly, I feel like this has been detrimental to many high school graduates and can have many long-lasting effects into adulthood. Those of you that teach financial literacy or about budgets in your classes, I'm sure that you've looked at the statistics or had discussions about how debt affects marriage and mental health of so many in our country. So again, this is a little bit alarming to me. Now, you may be asking what all this has to do with a simulated workplace, and my response to that question is everything. Think back to the senior enrollment in a pathway in 2018. 10% were preparatory, 10% were completers. According to the data report, 20% in 2018 completed a CTE certificate, and 65% of all high school graduates were college or career ready. In my opinion, that's just not enough. And I'd like to point out that the other 80% of students that were not preparatory or completer status missed out on essential soft skills and pathway information that would benefit them beyond a high school classroom, whether they were going to college or into the workforce. It's important that as educators that we understand that even if a student is college bound, the end game is employment. So without the minimum soft skills, which we teach our students, that puts them behind the regular or other entry-level labor force where they are making sure that they're getting those skills. And so that brings me to the necessary and immersive simulated workplace. So what is a simulated workplace? Well, it provides students the opportunity to master the skill sets and attributes necessary for gainful employment. It provides an educational environment that emulates the future workplace and that answers that question that I know you all hate. Why do I have to learn this? Okay, it provides the student an opportunity to be accountable for their learning, to collect evidence of their content mastery, and to earn recognitions for their achievements. And it puts into place a formal and purposeful relationship between education and business and industry. Transforming your classroom into a simulated workplace is also a great way to get your advisory committee more involved in student learning as well. And I'll discuss that a little later. So the goal of a simulated workplace is to change the culture of CTE and create high quality business and industry learning environments. It's also a new way of documenting student knowledge within an authentic work setting while replicating proper business and industry processes and procedures. Now, before you freak out about the word documenting and thinking that it means more work for you as a teacher, let me ease your mind. Most all of the documenting is either something that you already do or is something that the students will become accountable for, not you. But before we get into that, we need to talk a little bit more about the CTE culture and its need to change. So obviously, being a CTE teacher means that we are getting students ready for a specific career, usually within one of our offered pathways. And as such, I feel that it's imperative that we change the culture and language of our classroom. So last year, at the beginning of the year, I decided that I'm essentially training students for a job, that I was no longer going to call myself a teacher. They would obviously still call me Miss Smith, but my job was not that of a traditional teacher. I was an on-the-job trainer, and my students were not in a classroom. They were at on-the-job training. We no longer talked about homework or classwork. It was referred to as, various trainings depending on what I was teaching them, and students no longer got grades. They received compensation for the work they put in. I adopted a zero-tolerance policy on cell phones because our high school did the same. But to encourage compliance, I had students call local businesses to ask their cell phone policy. Most all of them were that they had to be out of sight while on the clock. So we discussed, and my students found it reasonable that out of sight while in the room for that hour was an employability skill. So this opened up a whole new level of communication between me and my students. It allowed me to better show them personal accountability in the workplace and discuss initiative through the lens of the world and not as a request in the classroom. It was a game changer. Now, one thing I did struggle with was finding ways to keep my advanced learners occupied. Some I was able to convince and trust to help struggling students without giving them the answers, but others naturally wanted to play computer games or be on their phones, which I was not okay with. And you know, I didn't have a good justification. I mean, I did, you shouldn't be doing this. It's against our class code and our class policy. But beyond that, I mean, I didn't have a good reason. And that's how the simulated workplace, YE, and managing the classroom changed my life. Again, this wasn't an easy change for me. Retraining my brain to use workplace vocabulary and getting the students to buy in was difficult at first. But as with everything, practice makes perfect, and the outcomes were well worth all the work I put in. So to continue with the idea of the simulated workplace, the West Virginia model focuses heavily on each class creating their own business and actually running an enterprise of some sort out of each class. And this seemed like a lot of work, but I really liked the idea. So I'm going to show you a little later of how I implemented the concept in each of my classes. The other part of West Virginia's simulated workplace was emphasis on environmental expectations and workplace safety, which you can see in the chart on your screen. I work at an ATC, so safety audits completed by students are already a part of my monthly routine. And they are important because it gets students used to maintaining a safe workspace as well as understanding a little bit about OSHA standards. But one part that I liked about the environment expectations was the requirement of proper program clothing. Not only does it relate to safety, but it relates to business and industry standards. So obviously I had no intentions of making my students come to school in a full suit or anything. That'd be insane, and most of them couldn't afford it. But what we as a class could do is discuss the type of clothing that we thought was appropriate for the type of class we were in and enforce those rules. The end results were almost always identical to the dress code that was already established by the school. However, we did have to add pajamas to our list because for some reason it's common attire in our area. I don't really understand it, but whatever. I also wanted students to have that above and beyond measure that dressing for work requires. After speaking with the presenter at Conclave on stimulated workplaces, we came up with the idea for students to wear name tags. So these name tags, they did not leave my classroom. They hung on the wall, but it did help keep students accountable for being in workplace attire. So the name tags either had their name on it or their job for that day, and sometimes both, depending on the size of the class. And students were required to put them on when they entered the room and then hang them back up when they left. And all this was part of their employability skills. The last component on this chart that I want to mention is environment. In the environment section specifically, it mentions time clock or attendance system. The speaker at Conclave, she said that they were provided actual time clocks for their students that uploaded to her computer, and that she had seen other classes where they used iPads, some app to scan student QR codes or something like that. I don't have anything that fancy, but what I do have is a student whose responsibility, they are my attendance manager, to take attendance using a paper check sheet as soon as they walk in the door. Once they finish, they give it to me and I record it and I see as soon as I get an opportunity. So again, taking some of that stuff away from you and giving ownership and responsibility to the students. West Virginia also came up with some skills that they feel are required for the next generation workforce. And many of these are going to tie into the academic and employability skills that we already cover in our pathways, as well as the youth entrepreneurs content, which I'll be discussing later. First is writing. Students need to be able to produce well-written documents and reports. I mean, that's pretty obvious, and they need to be able to be read by others and then be able to understand it. Originality, just being innovative. Resilience, adapting to changes effortlessly, not shutting down. I had a student last year who we really worked on the resilience aspect of this. Originality, just being innovative. I already did that one, silly me. Okay, knowledge of group dynamics, being able to be a productive group member, whether you like or agree with the people you're working with. I've talked to a lot of employers in my area, and they say that one of the biggest things that they have to deal with is, and a lot of it stems from social media, but kids not getting along, or sorry, employees not getting along, and it causing workplace issues. So we really discuss that in my class. Also persuasion, being able to communicate efficiently and effectively and get people to buy into what you're saying, which ties in with leadership, leading by example. Applied math and statistics, being able to look at results and analyze them and interpret them very quickly and accurately is a great skill. Collaboration, working in a team setting, encasing and solving open-minded problems. Again, using ingenuity to analyze and generate solutions quickly. And then self-improvement, just being able to keep up with global changes and demands by taking the initiative to improve your knowledge, your skills, and experiences. And like I said, this is going to fit hand in hand with the YE stuff that I'm going to talk to you about later. So to be able to fully teach these skills without sending students into the workforce or being left to their own devices to trial and error, a simulated workplace is the answer. And we as CTE teachers have a unique opportunity to help our students in this regard. To begin, instead of teaching my employment unit at the end of the year, like a lot of my colleagues have done and I've done in the past, I moved it to the beginning, and then I revisit parts of it at the end of the year. So to start a simulated workplace, students first have to apply for a job. Just like in the real world, you got to get the job before you can do anything or make money. So after that, they'll become employees and they'll earn compensation from the company. So for me, prior to MBA Conclave, this was in the form of grades. But after Conclave, I moved to a classroom money system. And again, with the help of YE, it was a much greater motivator for many of my students. And we also assessed the students, giving them evaluations and stuff. And sometimes it was by me, and then occasionally my business and industry partners might come in maybe for an interview or to see a project that the students had been doing and working on, and assess their presentation as well. So with each class, I first had to work on hiring my workforce. Again, this required me to come up with an application for students and also set up interviews. I had a list of jobs and their descriptions that students could pick from. We had to come up with a company name for each class and then establish what policies and procedures are important for this workplace. Again, most of them were agreed upon from the student handbook and my traditional classroom rules, but the students were given the opportunity to present reasonable policies and procedures as well. After hiring, we created an organizational chart and teams, and I gave students a chance to modify their job descriptions if they wanted, or depending on the class size, I would modify them to make sure that all the daily workplace tasks I needed to be completed would get done. We also discussed employee evaluations, the projects that we were going to do throughout the year. We discussed community partners that we had, if any. I have a really great partnership with a local bank branch, and then there are also some smaller boutiques that help with my business management class. And then we completed safety training, which again is required at an ATC, and I gave a pre-assessment for my content that we would compare to at the end of the year, all within the first 2 to 3 weeks of school. So a little bit more information about the application and interview process. I wasn't fully able to do what I plan to do this year because until Conclave, I wasn't as knowledgeable or prepared, but this year I intend to better implement the application and interview process in all my classes. This year, all of my students are gonna fill out an application, which I have a rough draft of, and it includes all the job descriptions I plan to use this year. I won't hand these out until maybe the second week of school because there are usually a lot of schedule changes and housekeeping things, and with COVID, I have no idea what's gonna be happening, but we're gonna do what we can. But some of my advisory committee members have agreed to interview my students, and it's a possibility we'll have to do group interviews as to not take up too much of my advisory committee members' time. I've also got another business teacher and a marketing teacher in my building that are willing to interview either in group or individually if I need them to. But the interview process this year will likely be virtual since we have so many restrictions due to COVID. But my advisory committee will have input in who should do what and how they did in their interview. This is also going to help give me give the students some comparison data at the end of the year when I have them do another interview. So as a class, we're also going to establish a company name. Again, this goes into changing mindsets about what we're doing and why it's important. So one of the classes, well, I teach business math, accounting, business management, sports marketing, Microsoft Office specialist. I have co-op, and I'm looking into entrepreneurship for this year. So in each class, I discuss the main concepts that students are going to learn and what careers they could have with that knowledge. So for instance, in my business math class, we learn types of compensation, payroll, taxes, budgeting, and some other financial literacy concepts. So I asked them where they would go to have someone give them advice on these concepts. And most of them come up with financial advisor. So using that information, I'd have them come up with an original name of a financial advising company. And from that point forward, that's what we are. And all of my references to the tasks, activities, lectures are related to training and jobs that we've been hired to do at that company. And again, I do this for all my classes, or plan to. As with any business, there has to be a chain of command. And so this organizational chart is not the one that I use, but it gives you an idea of some of the various jobs you could give your students in your simulated workplace. At the top is our advisory committee or the board of directors. Below that is the CEO or the administrator, and then me, the supervisor. Again, these are just some examples of student jobs. I created one of these for each of the classes that I have and posted it, but they were all tailored to the types of jobs I needed students to have. This also helps with my 3 before me policy that I discuss with my students at the beginning of the year, which is that once I've gone over directions and asked students if they have any questions, and they've started to work on their own, either because they didn't have a question or they weren't comfortable asking it, and they come up with a question, or maybe they're just working and have a question at that point, they have to ask 3 peers before they ask me. If it gets to me, then I probably did a bad job teaching it, or it's not blatantly obvious based on what they're doing, and I need to go over it with the whole class, so I take the time to do that. Now, the classroom job titles that I use the most are those provided by Eva Marie Foxwell in her book, Managing the Classroom. If you have not read this book, you need to add it to your summer reading list or professional development goals. It is great. I feel that these jobs give me more variety in the types of jobs that I need done in my classroom. The ones I use the most are project manager, timekeeper, transition manager, technology manager, scribe manager, communications manager, attendance manager, and quality assurance manager. Occasionally I'll throw the marketing manager in there. But in a large class, I'll break them into groups, and each group will have for sure a project manager, a timekeeper manager, scribe manager, communications manager, and quality assurance manager. I did come up with my own descriptions of what each of these does, but they're pretty self-explanatory, and I'd be willing to share my descriptions if you wanted. You just send me an email. It's at the beginning of the slideshow. I do have a clip here of Ms. Foxwell using her classroom management strategies at a conference in Delaware, but for the sake of time, I'm not going to show it to you here. Hopefully you'll get a version of this PowerPoint or Google Slide or however it gets sent, and you can click the link on your own time and watch it. It's about a 12-minute segment that will play, and it's just really amazing to see this in action. This is not exactly how it would work in a classroom, but still fantastic. So back to documenting, which I mentioned earlier. Again, this is the responsibility of your employees. Each of them has 2 folders in my classroom. One, which has private and confidential information, which I'm required to keep on hand as ATC policy. That one has things like medical information, discipline referrals, stuff like that, enrollment forms. And it stays locked in a cabinet. But then each employee has a classroom folder that contains a standards check sheet of the content that they mastered or that they are mastering, all of their employee evaluations, the job descriptions for which they have filled. I do have students switch jobs throughout the year. I didn't do that last year, but I'm going to do that this year. They also have documentation of their projects in their folder, a signed statement saying that they read their policies and procedures, documentation of passing their safety tests, any trainings that they complete. I try to create a certificate for them to put in their folder. And I make my standards a little higher. And, sometimes the test is their training assessment. And, either I'll set the standard high. If you make a B or higher, then you're certified in this. If you made a C or maybe B and higher, you're highly certified. And then, below that, you're just certified in it. If you make anything lower, then we need to kind of revisit some of those topics. But anyway, I also have them create a digital folder on Google Drive, and they keep writing samples in here, other digital assignments, flyers and things that we make, and then any projects, pictures of those, any projects that are too big to keep in the classroom or store in their folders. So as I stated last year, I learned so much, as I stated earlier, I learned so much at conference. But what has changed my teaching the most would have to be YE. Youth Entrepreneurs provides free innovative learning resources rooted in the 8 foundational values on this slide, to engage your students and transform your classroom. Now, I mean, when you read these tie back into those workplace principles established by West Virginia, but YE really gives you a curriculum to enforce these and show students what it means to actually have these. So responsibility, taking responsibility for your own life, because no one is ever going to be as concerned about your success as you. I can't tell students that enough. Being principled, acting with integrity and respect and toleration of those that are different from you. Knowledge, and I really like these, seek and use the best knowledge, drive change that benefits others, and exemplify humility and intellectual honesty. Freedom, respecting the rights of others and studying the links between freedom, entrepreneurship, and societal well-being. Passion, finding fulfillment in your life by improving the lives of others, doing things for other people. Opportunity, this is one that I harp on all year long. You make your own opportunities. That goes hand in hand with responsibility, sound judgment, and a win-win focus. So sound judgment, using economic thinking to create the greatest benefit while using the least resources. And also for knowledge, you know, if I'm going through a project and maybe I don't give all of the students all of the information. Maybe I have something that I want them to create in a marketing class, and I tell them they're creating it for XYZ customer, and then they're going to have to present it. All of them always fail because no one asks the customer what they want. You know, I'll pretend to be the customer. I've hired them. None of them will ask me what I want. None of them will do their market research. And so I talk about how they didn't seek knowledge and that they didn't use sound judgment. They wasted resources by creating a product that didn't satisfy me as the customer. So, and then the win-win focus. Cooperation creates real value in society for yourself and others. So doing those things, being innovative, coming up with new ideas, it's going to create value for people who can use your products or ideas, and then for yourself. So every activity that they have is hands-on and engaging, for sure. The curriculum topics available are the foundational values, which again enforce a lot of those soft skills covered in all Kentucky CTE classes. The entrepreneurial mindset, economics, marketing, and business finance. Now, if I didn't list a topic that you specifically teach, that's okay. There are a lot of activities that overlap with other content as well, and YE has an amazing support staff that can help you modify their lessons to fit most any CTE course, not just business. The best part about YE is that they fund all of their activities that require student resources, and it's super easy to get the materials. You can order them through Amazon or run to the store and pick them up yourself, and they will refund you for what you bought. They also supply their educators with a stipend for implementing their lessons. This doesn't mean that you have to teach only their content. You are free to adapt the content as you need to fit your class. They're also in the middle of developing a crosswalk between their activities and the labs offered by MBA research. So that is going to be fantastic when they get done with that. It is really going to change and innovate how you can use MBA and still get that good, rich content to your students. You know, I absolutely love YE and all it has to offer, and I recommend it to anyone that wants to innovate their classroom. You should look into it. This is a clip of one of the many activities that's available through YE. Again, I'm not going to show the video. It's about 15 minutes, I think, but you should watch it. It's a great activity that students will enjoy. Again, if I were teaching this lesson, as students exhibited those foundational values or answered questions, I would pay them with my classroom currency. Or if they gave answers during the debriefing section, and again, all YE lessons come with a debrief so that you can help guide students to the connections they should have seen. But ever so often, after paying the students for so much time, either when I'm running out of YE dollars to give away, or if they've just done an awesome job, then I have an auction. And again, this is the incentive to get students to really buy into this. And again, YE will pay for your auction items for your students. I typically buy things like food because the kids really like that, but sometimes I buy other things like movie posters, gift cards, really just anything that you think a high schooler would like. And at first, you know, the auction sounded a little elementary, and to be honest, one of my second graders was also doing something very similar in their class. But after implementing YE last year, I can tell you personally that high schoolers love it. Again, I'm not going to play the video due to lack of time, but please watch it. And if you'd like more information about YE, please feel free to email me and I will get you more information. I know that I was kind of all over the place, but I sure hope that everything I discussed was helpful. I would have much rather done this presentation in person where we could role play that you were my class to show you how these concepts work and their benefit. But again, if you have any or want any additional information, please reach out to me. This is the links to all of the statistics that I found. You can click on them and it'll take you directly to the area where I found the information. And again, any questions at all, please just email me. Or if you just want some guidance, or if you want to come see YE in action and your principal will let you, please come to my classroom. Have a great rest of your summer and good luck navigating COVID once school starts back.